Hello, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Apolla's Odyssey. I'm your host, Apolla Asteria, and it's good to be back. I haven't done a show in a couple weeks. Just been busy with the holidays, and man, this time of year, there's always just so much going on. I always have to fly back and forth, to see my family and fly all over. So it's kind of a crazy season. I hope you are all having a great holiday season. Let me know how it's going for you in the comments. So tonight's show, I wanted to get into the Apep Apophis goddess in Egyptian mythology, and basically how that correlates with an asteroid in ancient times, and how that also correlates with the series right now that is on Netflix, the Ancient Apocalypse series by Graham Hancock. Because I've actually been a major researcher and follower of Graham Hancock for many years now, way before the show came out. As I hope some of you maybe listening tonight are as well. So this is actually a topic I really like to get into. And, I was actually planning on just making tonight's show about how to deflect an asteroid, how we could come together as a human race and do that if that was something that we needed to come together to do. But I ended up finding this crazy connection with. I started going back into the flood myths and the myths of, some of the antediluvian myths from ancient civilizations that relate with a flood, have a story of a red dragon or a red serpent in the sky coming before it happened, basically representing the comet. So I started getting into that, and then I saw the Egyptian myth on this. And well, I mean, there isn't really much on the myth side of it, but it's more like what that represents to the Egyptians, what this god, the snake god, represents to them, which is like the god of chaos, which I'll get into in a little bit. And think it's really interesting to get into that because I feel that, something happened kind of maybe before their civilization that always represented to them, a comet always represented like the god of chaos, and what happened to them in ancient times or before their civilization. So maybe if you haven't watched or read Graham Hancock's work, or if you haven't watched the Ancient Apocalypse series, I guess I'm just assuming most people here have, and I just wanted to get into it because it's a hot topic. But if you don't know what I'm talking about, just look into Graham Hancock's work on Ancient Apocalypse. I'm sure if you followed me over the years, you know that this is something that I've been into for a very long time. I mean, really, even before I started reading Graham Hancock's books. So I think I want to kind of do a few different episodes, like, talking about all of this and the different flood myths. But I really wanted to focus on this one in particular because I think it's really fascinating. But like I said, I'm also going to get into, because originally on tonight's show, I wanted to talk about how we could deflect an asteroid if one came. and how we could come together and do that. So I think I'm going to start off with that and then get to the Apep, Apophis, Egyptian mythology aspect of all of this. So before I get started with everything tonight, and while I'm waiting for everyone to join the live here, I want to remind you all to please go check out my spears, my art, which is over here on shamanspears.com. I make uniquely handcrafted energy channeling devices for the purpose of channeling energy. And I never make any two the same. They are all made, but they are all made from bamboo and filled with copper coils, crystals, magnets, and sand I collect from sacred places around the world. I also fill them with naturally magnetic hematite sand, which is really interesting because hematite, which is a naturally magnetic crystal, is actually also found in our brains. And scientists realize, and it kind of makes us interconnected. So very interesting, magnetically, I meant to say. So basically, all the materials inside my spears are made for the purpose of amplifying energy. So I actually have a few left from my last two collections, and I'm working on a whole new collection right now. So again, these are up on shamanspears.com. And if you would like to purchase a spear, they make really great Christmas gifts. A lot of people ask me, what do you do with your spear if you have one? Like, what do you do with them if you don't do any sort of like energy work? Um, Actually, what I like to do with my spears is go hiking with them. That's all I do really with them, is like go hiking with them all the time. Anywhere I go, I even like take them around the world with me. A lot of times when people buy my spears, they've actually already been somewhere around the world with me. And I do that all the time. I'll take my spears like to like another country or Burning Man or whatever, and then I bring it back home and then sell it. So uh pretty interesting. Also, if you do get a spear, I actually just finished these last night. I make these kind of initiation scrolls, I like to call them, or they're kind of like a certification that talks about what it means to have a spear. So if you want one of these, they basically come free with the spears. So I just finished a lot of these last night. I'm really excited about that. All right. So getting started here. So like I said, with tonight's show, I first wanted to get into basically how we could come together as a human race to deflect an asteroid if it comes. So just to kind of sum up Graham Hancock's work. I mean, how do you sum that up like very quickly? But um I highly recommend reading Magicians of the Gods and America Before are the two that really blew my mind and turned me on to his work. So basically, if you haven't seen this show, I guess I to brief you. Um, Basically, through his research, he's discovered that there was most likely an impact by an asteroid that broke apart in the atmosphere, and pieces of it hit the Earth about 12,800 years ago. And there's a lot of evidence for this all over the planet, but from what him and other scientists have come to believe is that basically these pieces of this asteroid that broke apart hit parts of North America and Europe at the end of the last ice age. And this caused continent or basically like flash melting, and a lot of traditions in Europe and North America, a lot of like Native American traditions talk about these walls of water coming out of nowhere. America used to be covered in monkeys, but because of when this happened, there was a basically a flash of like extreme heat. It flash melted all these ice caps that were over North America and Europe, and then it basically caused continent-wide wildfires all across North America and Europe. So that's actually one evidence to look at with this. Is one little fact is that we don't have monkeys anymore because this happened. There used to be monkeys in North America. So I always thought that was interesting. But so basically when this happened, humanity had to really start over. And who knows where we were at before that happened, technologically. I mean, who knows how many people died when this event happened. There's basically every ancient culture around the world has a myth or a record of a flood happening, a major flood that happened. And a lot of these myths also talk about a red dragon or red snake coming in the sky before this event happened. And so, if you watch this series or read the books, you'll see that basically him and other archaeologists have found that in a lot of these ancient temples around the world, there seems to be some signs depicting that it was almost like a lot of these temples were built as reminders to us, to the future of humanity at the time. With the ancient people, they wanted to make a time capsule to basically remind humanity in the future that this event had happened and that it will happen again because of a planet that comes around through our system every I think it was like 3,600 years supposedly. And I might not have all those totally straight, but and okay, sorry, just reading the comments here. Blazin River mentioned pole shift. I know Rex Bear on Leak Project has been doing some shows on this, but yeah, so that is all involved with all this. And I know I'm kind of covering a lot here, just trying to brief you all in case you haven't read Graham Hancock's books or seen his work. But basically, he says that when this planet comes through, it like pulls on the magnetics of our planet, and it causes, it may cause a pole shift, it may cause these floods, and all these things that happen as well. So this is probably what happened during Atlantis. And you know if you look at a lot of these ancient sites around the world, these megalithic sites that are just buried under layers and layers of sediment, like most places in North America are probably not even found yet. Most of these megalithic sites, they're probably way under the ground because so much sediment covered North America when these apocalypses happened, or when this happened in this time. So so basically, like I was saying, all these sites around the world, they have like indicators that seem to be trying to show us now that the time we're in now astrologically is very important because it correlates with what they were experiencing at that time. And this planet supposedly coming back around that has this long elliptical orbit, and also the asteroid belt, or I think we're going through a certain part of the universe also at this time where there are a lot more asteroids than there normally are. And whenever we come back through this part, it's like our planet is passing through is like a car or a person trying to walk across a 6-lane highway without being hit, basically. So, I just have always been sorry, I'm nerding out a little here, but this is something I've been about and very interested in for years. And really what got me into speaking in this community, I think in a lot of ways. So, tonight I really think it's important, before I get into the myth of Apep and Apophis, um, basically how we can come together to stop an asteroid from hitting us if it happens again. Obviously, this was so important to the ancient people to build these megalithic temples as reminders to us in the future to pay attention to this, to pay attention to the sky and what happened during that time and what can happen again. And I think it's actually a really amazing and beautiful message. A lot of people I've heard are kind of like hating on this show. I haven't even seen the full show yet. I think I've seen like one or two episodes, but like I said, I've read all of his books, so I don't really need to see it, but it's amazing to watch, definitely. And I know a lot of people have been saying that supposedly it's a very dangerous show, and that it's dangerous that we talk about apocalypses, and that they're scaring people. But I think that it's actually a really beautiful message if you look at it, that this is something that we're all facing on our planet together. If this happens, this is everyone on the planet together having to deal with an asteroid that is coming. And that means all of us coming together to figure and working together to figure out how to deal with that when it does happen. And I think, to me, that is actually a really beautiful thing. I think it would be a great way to unite everyone on the planet. If this happened, I mean, I don't think it would be a great thing if it happened, but I'm just saying that, um, you know, I think it'd be really amazing if everyone on the planet learn to work together and unite in a way where um, we could deal with these things together. And I think it would make us really look at the human race as more of like one big family, instead of all this tribalism that's going on, because we're all in this together. It doesn't matter what's going on in this country or that country. If an asteroid comes and hits our planet, then we're all done. So I think it's a really beautiful, amazing message, and I want to get into that before I get into the rest of this here. So let me figure out what I wanted to start with. Basically, whenever I do these shows, I like to take a concept, like when I'm not interviewing anyone on my show, I like to basically take a concept and just break it down. And sometimes I'll kind of have an idea, and I literally don't think of these ideas until like the day of, like a few hours before. But sometimes I'll have an idea, and then I start researching and I start finding all these other things, and the idea ends up turning into a whole different thing. Um, so basically, I guess what I want to start with is, okay, I guess this would be a good thing to start with, is 8 ways to stop an asteroid. Or wait, you know what? Actually, sorry, hold on here. Okay, actually, let me see here. Sorry, just trying to find the right article here. Okay, actually, I want to start with this. Okay, so this is um most destructive asteroid impacts in human history. Experts and scientists, researchers have stated that in the past 600 million years, about 60 asteroids or similar objects of 3 miles or larger in size have hit the Earth. Three ground impact events on land have been determined to have caused the mass extinction of life on the planet. There's also known evidence of ocean impacts. Time and again, it has been debated whether ocean impacts events could cause a mega tsunami or just a mantle plume volcanism. The following asteroid impact events created huge craters in the past and may have affected life on Earth. First on the list is the massive 118-mile radius Vredefort crater located in Free State, South Africa, which hit 2 billion years ago. Second is the 80-mile wide radius Sudbury Basin located in Ontario, Canada, which hit 1.8 billion years ago. Third is the 55-mile radius Ackerman crater in South Australia, which hit Earth 580 million years ago. And then the fourth is a 25-mile radius Woodley crater in Western Australia, which hit 360 million years ago. And so this is just going through all these. I want to see if I can find some. Oh, I didn't have photos of this. Okay, so let's just look at this chart here. So, and then there's the Kara crater, which is 65 kilometers in radius, 70 8.3 million years ago. So this is really interesting. And I think one that a lot of Americans know of is the Chicxulub crater, which is in Yucatan, Mexico, and that's 65 million years ago. And so these are just, obviously the very ancient ones. And, that was just to name a few. And that is huge. Those are very big asteroids hitting our planet. And I'm curious to know actually if when those happened, if our moon was not around at that time. I'm curious to know if that was the case. So moving on to the next thing I have pulled up here is, let me see here. Okay, so I also want to talk about the more recent ones that hit the Earth. So this is on the NASA STEM website. Just how frequently do meteors hit the Earth? For technicality's sake, a meteor is just a piece of an asteroid or comet that has entered Earth's atmosphere. Before arriving at the atmosphere, these pieces are called meteoroids. Thousands of small rock fragments enter the atmosphere every year, and most of the debris is burned up on its descent to Earth, leaving a bright trail in the sky. The only two largest recorded meteor impacts on Earth were the 1908 Tunguska event and the 2013 Chelyabinsk, I know I didn't say that right, meteor. The 1908 event is the largest in recorded history, with an impact estimated to be similar to the explosion of 10 to 20 megatons of TNT. The meteor exploded just over 5 miles above the ground and flattened over 80 million trees of the Siberian forest in Russia. The Chelyabinsk meteor is the most recent meteor event and was widely watched across news and internet channels. In total, the explosion of this meteor sent a shockwave across the Chelyabinsk town fringes that injured over 1,700 people. Which, I mean, that's amazing that that many people survived that event. It's like both of these events took place in an area that where it wasn't harmful to people. But imagine, so I've seen this before, just these meteor impacts, how this would have affected people if it hit, somewhere like New York City or Los Angeles. I mean, it would have wiped out the entire city. So this is pretty major stuff here. So smaller meteor landings have been easily recorded with phones or cameras. Although some burn out as they enter in the atmosphere, there are others that can still be dangerous. In 2009 in Ontario, Canada, the Grimsby meteorite broke the windshield of a SUV. In 1992, Peekskill, New York, meteorites crashed into the back of a Chevy Malibu. It is said that the small meteor impacts are impossible to predict. Even the Chelyabinsk is considered a small meteor. They can only be detected once they start to descend to Earth. But what about the big impacts? What about the extinction level events such as the one that wiped out the dinosaurs? Big impacts are made by asteroids, not just a piece of them, aka a meteor. According to NASA, there are no known asteroids that will impact Earth in the next 100 years, and even then, they have a very low possibility of doing so. The asteroid designated as 2009 FD has a possibility of less than 0.2% impact Earth in 20,185. Crazy. Although very unlikely, massive impacts have left traces in Earth's surface. Craters are the evidence left from a large meteorite. Some are very noticeable, like the meteor crater near Arizona, but others can only be appreciated from space. Radifort crater is located in South Africa. It's approximately 250 kilometers in diameter and thought to be about 2.2 billion years old. The asteroid that made the crater was estimated to be 6 miles wide, and when it or 6 miles wide when it hit Earth. and made a hole 10 times deeper than the Grand Canyon. The Chicxulub crater is believed to be what's left of the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs. Most of it lies underwater in the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. It's approximately 105 miles in diameter and believed to have occurred 66 million years ago. Its particular peak ring structure was created just minutes after the impact, and although peak rings are common in space, this is the only one found on Earth. So I think that's really interesting because it just kind of gives you a general idea of what we're dealing with here. So that being said, and let me actually just go back and look through these comments here for a second. Jemmy Lawless here, which I believe is my uncle on Facebook, I'm not sure, says, "How about the Glassford crater?" I'm not sure about that one. I didn't know about that one. I'm sure there are a lot all over. I mean, even under the ocean. Cass and Lee's here says, "I suspect we'll never know until an asteroid hits us or fly very close to us. Many asteroids are detected mere weeks before they get close to Earth." I agree. I think that, whatever they say about it's like, how do they predict, what's coming from that far away? I mean, I'm sure a lot of times there are things that maybe break apart somewhere else in outer space and, end up coming towards us that we wouldn't know about. So, who knows how legit that research is. So, okay, so next I want to get into the 8 ways to stop an asteroid. So if we came together and tried to prevent this from happening, how would we go about that? So here. Okay, so no threats yet, but we have a plan. NASA personnel and countless telescopes around the world keep a sharp eye on the skies in case of threatening asteroids and comets. They scan the night sky regularly and plot the orbits of any newly discovered small worlds. Decades of searching have found nothing to worry about yet, but scientists want to be prepared nonetheless. The agency's Planetary Defense Coordination Office and the planetary defense experts have come up with several scenarios to stop our planet from receiving incoming space rocks. The work is early stage, but already we're testing some ideas on Earth. And I think this is okay. That's a more recent article. Okay. So the next option is a kinetic impactor. Kinetic impactors are the only way by which we might be able to alter an asteroid's path. It's in principle, this technique requires smacking an asteroid to change its orbit around the sun, so it no longer is a threat to Earth. I love how they said smacking an asteroid. I don't know, that's just so funny to me. um, some asteroids that may be loose piles of rubble that wouldn't be suitable for this technique, but a solid rock, this may work. And NASA plans to test out a kinetic impact with its double asteroid redirect mission, DART, which will slam into a small moonlet of the asteroid Didymos on September 26th. So I'm actually going to get into that in a minute here. So let me just hold off on that. Tractor beam. So this is the next option would be a tractor beam. A gravity tractor asteroid deflection method seems to borrow from science fiction scenarios as seen in Star Wars and Star Trek. Among many other space franchises, compared to science fiction, however, a real gravity tug would proceed more slowly. A robotic probe would meet up with a space rock and accompany it for at least several months, potentially years. Over the time, the spacecraft's gravity would adjust the orbit of the asteroid. The more massive the probe, the stronger its gravitational pull would be, and the faster the orbit would move. So the next option is a nuclear weapon. If scientists spot a hazardous space rock at the last minute, a nuclear bomb would likely be the only feasible choice. that's a technology that already exists, and with some adaptations, a rocket armed with a warhead could launch from a conventional launch pad within a relatively short period. Wow, that sounds like not a very good idea. The key to a successful deflection would be to detonate the weapon a few hundred feet or meters away from the surface, not to impact it directly. If executed at the proper distance, the explosion would make the surface of the asteroid rip away into space and push the asteroid firmly away from its current path. Wow. Well, I mean, I don't know. To me, that sounds like a really bad idea because I feel like wouldn't it just hit it and then just explode in the atmosphere and have like a million pieces just raining down over us? I guess maybe it needs to be a certain distance. And that could be what could have happened before. Like, what if, this whole series by Graham Hancock that everyone's talking about right now, like, this ancient civilization, uh, that built all these places that are being uncovered from, this era. What if it was a very advanced civilization, but, because metal rusts after 200 years and wood rots after so long, the only thing we have left is like the crazy stone structures that were left behind after, the flood happened. So maybe there was actually a very advanced civilization before who did the same thing. Like maybe there was an asteroid coming, 12,800 years ago, and they decided, like, hey, maybe we should just, like, shoot a bomb at this. And then it just blew apart in the atmosphere, like Graham Hancock says happened, and just, rained down everywhere instead of being pushed back into space. So just some theories here. Spray painting is the next option. So spray painting. More leisurely options for asteroid deflection also exist. Spray painting an asteroid takes advantage of the properties of albedo. Darker surfaces tend to reflect less, lighter surfaces tend to reflect more. It would take many years, perhaps decades, for the effect to be noticeable, but it's something that happens naturally anyway. Scientists study the Yarkovsky effect, which is how sunlight slowly alters the path of asteroids as they go around the sun. If the scheme actually works, proponents say spray painting might be an inexpensive way to save Earth. That is really weird. Wow. Okay. I mean, okay, sorry. Let me just go back. I mean, how do they expect to do that? I don't really understand. I mean, I don't know. Apparently, I need to know more details on that because it's like, are they saying to like go to an asteroid and just send astronauts to an asteroid to start painting it? I don't really get that. Kind of weird. Okay, so the next option, the seventh option here is ion propulsion. Using ion propulsion, or propulsion that uses charged or electrified molecules, is a variation of the gravity tractor effect that may be inexpensive. This kind of propulsion is very small but builds up over time as there is no friction in space. Ion propulsion also has been tested numerous times already. A good example is NASA's Dawn spacecraft, which did so in its mission that it visited two space rocks. In its mission that where it visited two space rocks. Okay. And the eighth option here is laser ablation. This is the one that people kind of more commonly hear about, and from my understanding, is probably one of the main reasons why Space Force was created. So turning to a more out there scenario, laser ablation out there. Okay. I mean, I'm pretty sure we already have space lasers. I'm pretty sure America and China has those. So I don't know if like that's just a theory, or I'm pretty sure I read that somewhere. Um, okay, so turning to a more out there scenario, laser ablation is another potential way to move asteroids around. Spacecraft, perhaps even little CubeSats, would surround an asteroid and strategically laser a part of its surface. The ablation or removal of surface material would cause the asteroid to drift in the opposite direction. To me that probably is the best like that makes the most sense to me. Lasers are no stranger to space, but not on such a large scale. We're more used to lasers used by Mars rovers like Curiosity and Perseverance to access the properties of rocks. Getting the laser to move the rock is another technology hurdle altogether. I feel like we aren't that far from achieving that. Okay, so the ninth option is an asteroid tether. And I guess this is what that would look like here. Tethering an asteroid sounds simple in principle, although there are a lot of questions to figure out how to tow it. What kind of material should form the web? How strong does it need to be? How do we use spacecraft to nudge the asteroid out of orbit? This idea, therefore, is still pretty hypothetical. NASA awarded a future tech contract in 2014 to assess how well tethers may move around asteroids and space debris. It was called the Weightless Rendezvous and Net Grapple to limit access excess rotation system or Wrangler. In the near term, we may be able to test out the plans on satellites that are much closer to Earth, with a side benefit of cleaning up hazardous space junk in low Earth orbit. That sounds like a great idea. Okay, and then that was okay. I guess we're done there. So, those are different theories, and obviously, it doesn't sound like they have any of those like actually very well worked out yet. And so I'm gonna go back and look at the comments here. Okay, Sylvan Forge here says, as to interdiction, the DART mission proves that we have at least one decent way, assuming we can detect early enough. Yeah, so basically, I'm not sure. Okay, one second here. I want to get into the DART mission just briefly here. So that took place on October 3rd. So October 3rd. And basically, NASA was able to, I believe, hit an asteroid. Okay, let me just read this real quick here. So this was posted on October 3rd. On Monday, NASA successfully launched a spacecraft into space and crashed into the never seen before Dimorphos, the DART double asteroid redirection test. A mission captivated the attention of people globally, as it was NASA's first planetary defense mission done with the purpose of preventing us from suffering the same fate as the dinosaurs or the Ice Age people, getting splattered by an asteroid. But now the crash has happened. What's the next DART mission? Do we know if it was successful? Can we sleep better at night? The short answer is yes. You can rest a little better, Carolyn Ernst, DART Draco instrument scientist at Johns Hopkins said. The first test that we did was a success. The DART mission has two major components. The first was seeing if NASA had the technology to send a spacecraft into space to hit an asteroid that has never been seen before. And this mission, or this part of the mission, was a success as seen on Monday. However, the second part of the mission is observing the aftermath of the impact to see if the asteroid's path changed. The part of the mission of vital importance to measuring its success. If you went up and tried to move an asteroid to deflect it from hitting the Earth and it didn't move, then it's not successful, right? There's the next DART investigation team comes in. The team will spend the next 12 months until major funding ceases studying images and data to determine if the hit made a difference. What we need to do now is figure out how much we actually deflected it to really see how much of a push we give it, and that can be a piece of the puzzle that informs how you would actually design a mission that was going to try to deflect something. So I think it's really amazing that this is being handled, and at least astronauts are or NASA and these different space agencies are looking into this. I heard China is also supposedly working on a project like this, but with the laser technology. But that probably means other things as well. With the lasers, not just considering asteroids, so kind of scary. So okay, so I want to wrap this up by tying this all together to the Apep Apophis mythology in Egypt. Now that we covered, how we can deal with all of this if it happens. So let me go through this here. I had a lot of other articles pulled up, but I think I'm just going to read these last few here and get into this part of what I'm talking about. All right. Okay, so I just love this site, Ancient Origins. They just have the greatest articles. And this is an older article from 2016, but this is just kind of the reason why this came out at that time, connecting with the Apophis myth, is because I believe there was a comet going by at that time called Apophis. So all right. The comet that changed civilization, and may do it again. On September 30th of what year was this posted? 2016. The first human spacecraft ever to orbit a comet was deliberately crashed into its surface in order to get the closest possible pictures of the enigmatic celestial body. This would send its mission that began. This would end its mission that began when the vessel was launched over 12 years ago. During the past 2 years, the European Space Agency's Rosetta probe has been circling the comet millions of miles from Earth, making unprecedented close-range observations of comet. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. One of the spacecraft's most significant accomplishments is to have taken readings of the comet's makeup, determining that it contains some of the basic building blocks of life. Uh, so, cometary impacts, it seems, may have helped start life on Earth, but comets such as the focus of the Rosetta mission have also posed threats to earthly life. So, this particular comet is around 2.5 miles across. If it hit the Earth, which thankfully it didn't, it could put an end to civilization as we know it. A comet just 500 feet in diameter is believed to have caused the Tunguska event of 1908 when it exploded over a remote area of Siberia with a force of 15 megaton bomb, flattening 1,000 square miles of the forest. But the Tunguska comet was minuscule compared to this one, estimated to have been around 10 miles wide, which almost collided with our planet 3,500 years ago. Spectacular and terrifying ancient comets. This comet was recorded by the Egyptians in the 22nd year of the reign of the pharaoh Tutmosis III. It also described it as who also described it as a brilliant disk much larger than the full moon, adding that it was a marvel never before known since the foundation of this land, Egypt. Chinese astronomers who meticulously recorded celestial occurrences for astrological purposes also noted the breathtaking event. The ancient Mawon Dewey Silk Almanac, preserved the Hunan Provincial Museum in Chingash, depicts the comet as one of the largest ever observed. Not only did it fit a large part of the sky, it had an astonishing 10 tails, the biggest comet observed since the birth of modern astronomy. De Chazot's comet of 1744 had only 7. The Egyptian record is found in a manuscript now in the Vatican Library called the Thule Papyrus. A number of writers have cited it as evidence for an ancient UFO sighting, leading some scholars to question its authenticity. However, it would seem to have concerned a genuine event. The 22nd year of Tutmosis III's reign is thought to have been around 14,086 BC, which is precisely the year by our modern calendar that the Chinese observed the 10-tailed comet. The comet must have passed terrifyingly close to our planet. Indeed, the ancient comet's appearance was so spectacular that it seems to have had a profound influence on religions throughout the world. It seems that this unprecedented celestial phenomenon was taken to be the appearance of a new god. At this precise time, contemporary civilizations across the globe all began to worship a new deity depicted as a winged disc hanging in the sky. Examples include the Hittite god Kumarbis, the Syria god Antum, the Mitannian god and the Persian god Ahura Mazda. In China, a new divinity called Lao Tianye, the great god, appeared at this time during the Dynasty and was represented by a circle with a series of straight lines radiating in a fan shape beneath and to the side of it, which looks remarkably similar to the depiction of a comet. And here is an example of that right there. Fascinatingly, the glyph also is almost identical to the symbol for a new god that appeared in Egypt during the reign of Tutmosis III called the Aten. It was represented by a circle with fan-shaped series of lines radiating from it. Just like the symbol for Lao Tian Ye, Egyptologists have long assumed that the Aten glyph represented the sun, which no doubt it did when the pharaoh Akhenaten made Aten worship the state religion in the mid 1300s BC. But when it first appeared in the capital of Thebes over a century earlier, it is accompanied by no inscription specifically associating it with a solar deity. And so there's an example of that. And I've been to Egypt personally for a research trip, and I definitely saw depictions of this all over. And I mean, obviously, like the winged discs, they don't really have it pictured here, but the winged disc is like something that you see all over in Egypt. Um, okay. But the sudden appearance of new religions was not the only social upheaval to accompany the comet's close encounter with Earth. Throughout the world, there were simultaneous, unprecedented period of violence. Egypt embarked on a vicious military campaign, conquering what is now Israel, Lebanon, and Libya. The Hittites of Turkey struck out at their neighbors in the eastern Mediterranean and Syria. The Mitanni kingdom attacked the Syrians of Iraq. The Kassites of northern Iran invaded Babylonia in southern Iraq, and the Yaz people of Armenia ferociously attacked everyone around them. And the Harappan civilization of northwest India was wiped out by marauding tribes from Afghanistan. And all this followed a period of relative peace throughout the world that had lasted for generations. Experts generally believe that the period of intense warfare and social unrest around the world was due to a short term climate change that saw global temperatures drop. Resultant crop failures meant the kind of scarce resources that invariably led to conflict. The question, however, is what caused the bad weather that lasted for a decade or so? Threats to life and civilization. In 1985, astronomer Carl Sagan identified the comet of 1486 BC as Comet 12P Pons Brooks, suggesting that a fragment of it had broken off and impacted Earth. The resultant explosion, throwing debris high into the atmosphere and impeding the sun's rays for many years, causing global temperatures to fall. But this may not have been the only effect of the cometary impact. At the International Conference on Catastrophic Events and Mass Extinctions held in Vienna in July 2000, scientists gathered to discuss possible threats to life on Earth posed by asteroid and comet impacts. Interestingly, besides the obvious calamities such as impacts would cause, such as firestorms, nuclear winters, and tsunamis, attention was drawn to various harmful chemicals that some comets contained. One of these is the amino acid vasopressin that can cause violent and aggressive behavior in humans. Is not present at present known if 12p Pons Brooks contains vasopressin, but if it does, then the substance entering the atmosphere to contaminate the food chain could, in part, have been responsible for the unprecedented period warfare that gripped the planet in early 1400s BC. That is fascinating. Coincidentally, just as the Rosetta mission comes to an end, astronomers have determined that a fragment of this comet, the one of 1486 BC, is heading for its closest approach to Earth on 11th February of next year. Okay. So, like I said, this article is from 2016, so I guess that was 2017. The comet has broken into several pieces after a close pass from Jupiter, one of them being what is now designated as another comet, first identified in 1948, and is around a mile wide, but luckily it won't hit Earth. However, it's possible that Earth's orbit could take us through the comet's tail. Whether or not this would have an effect on the atmosphere remains to be seen. Okay, so that's a little bit of a backstory of how this is all going to correlate with the myth of Apep Apophis in Egypt. Okay, so moving on to the next one here. Okay, so here's a general description of Apep Apophis. So the Egyptian snake god. Apep is a giant Egyptian serpent god whose goal is to devour Ra, the sun god illuminating the earth or the entire universe. According to Egyptian mythology, every night since the creation of the world, Apep has tried to eat Ra, even though the latter was always defended by Set, Sobek, Mot, Isis, and Thoth. Today, we will discover together the myth of Apep, the myth of the eternal combat of Apep against Ra, and the other Apep, the snake, which is an asteroid that is from another legend. So let me get into all this here. And I just want to remind you that the connection I'm making with this is I feel that, maybe even before the comet that I just mentioned, when I just read the last article took place in Egypt, I think that the reason why they have these legends is because this is something that is so ingrained in the human psyche from an event that probably happened before, Egypt's supposed what they call the time of the first time, or basically right after the flood waters receded. They probably started sharing this legend of, and this was probably just so ingrained in their psyche of, this basically this legend of this red snake going through the sky, and then this deluge happening, that it became a very integral part of their mythology. So I want you to keep that in mind while I read this right now. So Apep and Egyptian mythology. Already present before the creation of the world by Ra, Apep, or Apophis, is an evil entity, the embodiment of darkness and destruction. Apep is a huge snake, allegedly as wide and long as the Nile. The snake is a fundamentally evil being whose sole motivation is to eat the falcon-headed sun god Ra. The latter illuminates the world during the day, crossing the sky on his boat before passing through the underworld to return to his point of departure. It is the world of darkness that Ra is the target of all types of monsters, demons, and ghosts who wish to eat him. Indeed, Ra, a hawk with a sun on his head, appears extremely appetizing to him. Apep against Ra. Each night, Apep thus leads his army with the aim of eating Ra, yet he encounters great difficulty in reaching his objective because Ra has assembled a team of Egyptian gods to defend himself. Set, the god of chaos and tempest, with the mission to focus on Apep and repel him with sandstorms and lightning. Sobek, the crocodile head god of strength and power, Ra's longtime bodyguard, the god Sobek, unlike Set, focuses on the evil horde of Apep. Thoth, the Ibis god of knowledge, planning for each night a new strategy to surprise Apep and his army. Mot, the wing-headed goddess of justice, offering magical healing to her team, able to fly, catching the team members who have fallen on the boat of Ra. Isis, the goddess of magic, unleashing powerful spells on Apep and his army during difficult situations. With this shock team, Apep lost every single fight, which never discouraged him. Apep could be mortally wounded, but he had the ability to regenerate when he was covered by the deepest darkness of the world of the dead. Apep is the antithesis of the gods representing chaos and darkness, the opposite of the values of the Egyptian pantheon, whose sacred mission was to spread order and light throughout the world. However, Apep contributes to the equilibrium of the universe, being one of the original components and therefore should not be definitively defeated because his total elimination would destabilize the universe just as much as if the gigantic snake managed to eat Ra. According to this myth, Apep is responsible for eclipses. Sometimes Apep succeeded in swallowing Ra during the surprise attacks in broad daylight, which made the sun disappear from the sky of mortals. Fortunately, the other gods quickly came to the rescue to pierce the belly of Apep, freeing Ra and thus ending the eclipse. And so keep that in mind visually. If you're like, imagining a visual representation of what that would look like, in their mythology, it's, basically this battle between, the sun and this long red snake in the sky that takes place constantly. So this is, and obviously, like I said, Apophis or Apep kind of stands for, it stands for a snake, but also for an asteroid or comet in the more ancient form of it. So, this is obviously something that is very ingrained in the psyche of these ancient civilizations around the world. The other version of the myth, Apep, Set, the substitute of Ra. In the Egyptian religion, Set gradually takes the place of Ra in the myth of the solar boat and replaces the entire team of Egyptian gods. Ra is then relegated only as the bearer of the sun and not as the eternal adversary of Apep as he was. How unfortunate it would be if you missed the great passage in Egyptian mythology. So the myth of Osiris. According to the Egyptian myth of the beginning, Ra created the world by cleverly mixing the darkness from which Apep came and the original ocean. From this enlightened mixture came Shu, the wind, and Tefnut, the warmth of the sun. Shu and Tefnut married to give birth to Geb, the earth, and Nut, the sky. Geb and Nut in turn married and had 2 sons and 2 daughters, who also married each other in pairs: Osiris, Set, Isis, and Nephthys. Osiris took his sister Isis as his wife, while Set took his sister Nephthys as his wife. Osiris was quickly sent to Earth to become the god pharaoh who guided mankind. When he arrived, Osiris fully committed himself to his mission. He brought to humanity a peace, security, and unity that had never been seen before. Set soon became jealous of Osiris's position, but kept his resentment to himself at first. However, when he realized that Nephthys was cheating on him with Osiris, he began to feel a deep hatred for his brother. Set decided to assassinate Osiris in order to obtain the throne of Egypt. To do so, he visited the best craftsmen in the world to create a beautiful chest covered with precious stones and metals. This chest was made with a certain interior shape so that the only thing that it could contain was Osiris himself. Set organized a large banquet at the banks of the Nile to which he invited Osiris and his relatives. At this point, he declared that he would offer the large chest to anyone who entered the chest in its entirety. Not surprisingly, only Osiris managed to enter the chest. It was at this point that the plan of Set and his accomplices was revealed. They hurled themselves into the chest and welded it opening before throwing it into the Nile, and Osiris drowned. The chest then drifted down the Nile until it came to a shrub by the riverside that trapped it in its roots. Over the years, the shrub completely absorbed the chest and Osiris. The chest and Osiris gradually found themselves in the middle of its trunk, and on its side, the tree grew at a supernatural speed, thanks to the divine presence of the body of the deceased Osiris. The tree grew so large that it fed the lust of a great foreign king who made it one of the columns of his palace. Isis, who traveled the world in search of her husband's body, arrived in the royal palace after years and years of searching. She convinced the king to give the pillar to her and cure her only heir of a fatal disease in appreciation. In possession of the chest, and thus the body of Osiris, she succeeded in reviving him for a single night, which enabled her to become pregnant with Horus. But before she had time to perform certain rituals to bring Osiris back to life, Set falls on the body of Isis's unfortunate husband during a hunting trip. To prevent any resurrection that might lead to the end of his reign, Set cuts the body of Osiris into 14 pieces and scatters them throughout Egypt. Once again, Isis sets out to find the body of Osiris in tears. These tears attract Nephthys and Anubis, the son of Nephthys had with Osiris, who are sympathetic to Isis and help her in her quest. The three of them managed to find 13 of the 14 parts, but as they were about to find the last part, a fish eats it and digests it quickly. This part, namely the phallus of Osiris, is thus lost forever. Osiris cannot be reconstructed in its entirety and is brought back to life with an incomplete body. This incomplete body will then prevent him from directing the living. Set will therefore retain his place as the king of Egypt, exercising as much less an upright reign than his brother during his lifetime. Osiris will be forced to leave the world of the living and go to the underworld where he will rule over the dead. So the myth of Horus and Set. The majority of this enlightened tribunal, composed of Ra, the falcon-headed sun god, and Shu, the god representing the wind, and Thoth, the ibis-headed god of knowledge, immediately repelled against Egypt's current situation. Shu and Thoth find it despicable that Set would derive Horus by killing his father of his rightful royal palace. The two gods are therefore ready to go to Set and ask him to abdicate without delay. Nevertheless, the myth cannot stop here. Ra is extremely offended that his opinion is not asked because he is the father and, first of all, the gods of Egypt. The falcon sun god declares that Horus may well make a bad king. For Ra, the latter must prove his worth before any form of abdication that would put Egypt in a very unfortunate position. The declaration of Ra is followed by a various great trials between Set and Horus, duels, chariot races, trials of strength, and so on. The many trials of the competition culminate in a trial called the Hippopotamus trial, and in this event, the two rival gods must each plunge into the bottom of the Nile as hippopotamuses and hold their breath as long as possible. During this test, Isis, out of concern for the future of her son, will create a magic harpoon to catch Set and bring him back to the surface of the Nile. Horus is, however, unhappy in the situation because he has the ambition to win fairly. Very angry, Horus tears off his mother's head and throws it away. Following this matricide, the court of the three gods is angry against Horus and punishes him by proposing to Set to decide the form of a last trial. This final trial would determine that he would be the definitive king and the legitimate and legitimize his superiority over Horus forever. Set thus claimed the final test would be a race of ships built with only stones. So okay, I didn't mean to get so deep into this because I thought it was going to go back to um okay, the part about Apep. So basically, eventually, Set is banished to the desert. More takes place. You can read it later, but so he's banished to the desert to his original kingdom. It was here that he began his long journey of repentance alongside Ra in his solar boat. It was truly his redemption that Set became a popular and beloved god. After having been the god of chaos and destruction, now he was able to question himself by working for the good cause. Gradually, he becomes the symbol of victory over good, over evil, in the struggle against Ra's enemy, Apep. So there you go, bringing it back to that. And then, so basically, this also correlates with a Norse tradition of a giant snake, and it's basically the same legend. So I just wanted to mention that. And yeah, so basically that's the backstory on all of that. And, I just think it was really fascinating how it all kind of correlates with these ancient flood stories from around the world. And also there's the Quetzalcoatl story in Mexico, and the one of the story of a red dragon coming before a flood in China. So these stories are just very ingrained in the human psyche, and I just thought it was important to kind of share that with you all because I think these archetypes are something that really plays out in our consciousness, and whether we realize it or not. And I think it kind of relates to this ancient fear we have of this comet coming back and possibly causing destruction on our planet again. And so one final thing I wanted to share with you all is I'm sure a lot of you have heard of the seven Apkallu, or the seven sages, or the guys with the bags that you see in every picture around all these ancient megalithic structures around the world. And I haven't seen the end of the Ancient Apocalypse series on Netflix, so I don't know if I'm sure they probably get into it, but that is my favorite part in Magicians of the Gods. So if you haven't read that book by Graham Hancock, I highly recommend doing that because you're going to learn a lot more from that than you would from the series. So I'm not going to get into all the details of this group, but basically there was this group of these seven sages that came from that were like remainers of Atlantis, and basically these people that had to keep this knowledge and pass it on for the future of humanity, so that the future human race knew about what had happened in the past. So I found this really great. This is actually a chapter from a book that I'm reading here, or the summary of a chapter from a book, but I think this does a good job of kind of summing up who they were. So this is just for you to basically look into later if you want to know more about them. I'm just going to briefly read this here. So the seven sages of Atlantis. During the first time, another curious group in Egypt was founded. Their legacy continued even after the deluge. This fascinating group was identified as the followers of Horus, the seven fallen angels, the Sheptui, or the Sebeti, the seven sages, who provided the illicit heavenly knowledge, who were mythological beings, remembered both as bearers and the preservers of knowledge. They founded a cult of astronomer priests that guarded the Atlantean knowledge, religion, and technology for millennia after the deluge. And that cult spawned the Brotherhood Orders of the Snake that continue even to this day. these curious antediluvian gods, the Sabeti Shibuti, not coincidentally were recorded and described as beings with the characteristic long-headed serpentine distinction. They were also known as Urshu or Watchers. They were divine beings that acted as intermediaries between humans and the higher ranking Neter gods. The illustrious snake order of priests appears to be akin to the semi divine order of Enoch or Oannes, who led the Anunnaki down from Mount Hermon. The designation Urshu actually translates from ancient Egyptian as watcher. Nine divine beings comparable to the Shemsu Hor, also known as the companions of Horus. Similarly, this author believed that the demigods or priests were the original mentors of pharaohic civilization, teaching them knowledge. In the same line of thought, Osiris was known as the serpent king god who voyaged around the world as the bringer of civilization and the founder of the mystery cult of knowledge. Just as Quetzalcoatl was a serpent god, the civilizer of the teacher of arts, sciences, and crafts to the Central Americans. All sources of antiquity seem to speak about the same source for antediluvian civilization, which derived from the illicit knowledge of heaven and the seven sacred sciences received from the infamous seven fallen angels for the benefit of giants and illustrious or giants and rebellious humans. Manetho recorded circa 250 to 300 BC that ancient Egypt was divided into three great eras: the reign of the gods, the followers of Horus who migrated to Egypt from somewhere, and the dynastic reign of pharaoh kings, which began sometime around 2950 BCE with Menes. So that's a great way to kind of sum that up, or all of this up in there. Kind of started with, what do we do right now if this happens again? And then, how ingrained this is in the human psyche, and, basically how we started back over, after the flood happened. So these are all things that you can look into, and they would all make a great show on their own. I'm probably going to do more shows on different aspects of this topic in the future. So I'm excited to do that. I'm just looking back to the comments here. Gib here says Sphinx definitely had water damage. Just going back through everything here. I have someone quoting, Kassan here is quoting parts of, I think Genesis? Okay. I'm not sure what these quotes are from, but kind of interesting here. So just going back through the comments. So thanks everyone for joining on tonight's show. And I want to remind you all to please go and check out my spears that are over here at shamanspears.com. Because I am not quadruple jabbed, I currently cannot work in the entertainment industry. So, which has been my main work, over my whole life, basically. So if you want to support me, please go check out my spears, which are over here at shamanspears.com. They make really great Christmas gifts. I do next day shipping on all orders, and I have a few left from each of my last two collections. I'm putting out a new one pretty soon here, but I don't know if it'll be out before the holidays. I hope so, but maybe not. It's been a lot of work. But yeah, like I said, I have a few left here, and also, like I said, I have all these ancient scrolls, which I just finished. Oh, thanks for the super chat there, Marvin. Really appreciate that. But all these scrolls come with a spear, so if you buy one, it comes for free with them, and it's basically like this kind of initiation thing. It's kind of a secret until you get it. You get one, and then you can see what this says. So pretty cool stuff. So thanks everyone for joining tonight. I think if I don't do interviews the next few weeks, then I'll probably get more into this story, different aspects of this. I think I would like to do an episode strictly on the seven stages or the seven Amkalu. I think that'd be really fascinating. Just since, this is something that I've always been fascinated by, you know, the whole flood story and all of this ancient civilizations, which, if you've been watching me over the years, you probably know. But I think it's really interesting to kind of get more into this now because it's on everyone's mind so much. I mean, I just see everyone posting about it in the show because the show is on right now. So I have a lot of fun with this. I like nerding out on it. So thanks everyone for joining me tonight. And I should be back here again next Wednesday. So make sure you hit the notification bell so you can see when I go live. Sometimes I don't go live on my usual Wednesday show. Sometimes I randomly will decide to do a live other days. So if you want to be notified of when I go live, make sure you hit the notification bell so that you know. All right. So thanks everyone for joining me tonight on Apollo's Odyssey. And until next time, over and out.